All right, we're live right now, and I want to thank God, like I always say, that this is the day that the Lord has made, and we'll rejoice and be glad in it because whatever day God has made, you can be sure it's going to be a great day, irrespective of whatever happens in the day. Recently, I've been talking about thanking God. Like a month of November is the month of Thanksgiving, not because we have Thanksgiving in America, but because it's right to give thanks to God always. So I want to welcome you to Life and Relationship Realities with Tolu Alabi. And today is another interesting episode because of the amazing couple that I have on this program today. And so today I have Mr. Collin Armstrong, and we have Mrs. Ruka Armstrong. I think that Ruka is taking our surname very, very strong. That's why our surname is there on the screen. You know, but I would like to introduce the couple that I have today. And so today we'll be talking about interracial marriage. They're going to be sharing their story of interracial marriage. Some things are not sometimes as easy as you think they are. And so they'll be telling us their story today. So I'd like to introduce our couple, our guest today. Collin Armstrong graduated from Methodist University with a bachelor's degree in history and a minor in religion. Is currently attending Osbury Seminary to obtain a graduate degree for a Master's of Divinity. That's powerful. He also is a full-time teacher at Longmont Christian High School, where he teaches religious studies. Ruka is a graduate of St. Andrews University, where she earned a bachelor's degree in business administration. She currently owns her own photography business called Graceful Snaps Photography, while also coaching volleyball at Longmont Christian School. I see the connection. School. Together they have two beautiful children, Caleb and Grace, with another child due in April. They have been together since high school and have built a beautiful life together. Viewers out there, please help me welcome my guest today, Collin and Ruka Armstrong. You are welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. So we're gonna just start first. Collin, can you hear me very well?
Pastor Tolu, I'm having a little trouble hearing you, but I can hear you decently well.
Okay. So maybe Ruka, can you speak? Maybe your husband can hear your voice better.
Yes. Colin, can you hear me?
I can kind of hear you.
Okay.
Okay. His signal might be a little off.
Okay. So
Um,
we'll just keep working. While he's working on the audio, we just keep going. So my first question, I know that Colin will have to leave at some point, so it's good to do as much as we can. How did you guys meet? How did you meet?
well, we went to middle school together, to Prairie Middle School, and we went to high school together. But we didn't know each other. We had never met. I'm sure I've seen him around school a few times, and he's probably seen me, but we didn't know each other, and we didn't have the same group of friends. But then our senior year of high school, we started both working at Chick-fil-A, at a new one that opened up, and that's how we met. Was at Chick-fil-A in high school.
So does Colin want to say something about that?
Did you ask me, Pastor Tolu, to add to that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so like Ruka said, I'm sorry guys, I'm having a little trouble with signal. So yeah, like Ruka said, we met at Chick-fil-A with one another about 10 years ago now, which is pretty wild. We had attended the same school for a long time, but our paths hadn't really crossed, it being a pretty school. So God brought us together. It was November of 2010 is when we first really met. So yeah.
Okay.
While still in
So
high
why?
school.
Okay. So while you guys were supposed to be working at Chick-fil-A, which you were being paid, you were looking at each other, right? So,
Basically, yes.
so how did
Yes,
that
ma'am.
connection happen? I mean, you went to you went to middle school together. No, did you go to middle school and high school together?
Yes, we did.
So you went to middle school
Yeah.
together, you went to high school together. So here you were at Chick-fil-A. Did you recognize one another when you saw each other? Like, oh, we've been to school together. Did you recognize each other?
No, we actually had no idea and did not recognize each other and didn't recognize each other at all. And it was just like a mutual friend that we had there. And I think actually the owner was giving a speech and talking to everyone and all the new hires. And sorry, my son is wanting to come into the thing here. Caleb. Um, and then Collin walked in, and he was about, I think, like 5 minutes late when he walked in, and he was still putting on his belt. And we were all just thinking, like, who is this kid that's walking in late? And that's how. And then the rest of the day, we spent the whole day together, and we were basically like side by side, hip by hip, the whole entire time.
Okay. So how was your relation? How was your friendship? Because I mean, you said you've known each other, but then you met at Chick-fil-A. So how was your friendship like when from that first day on? How was it? How will you describe your friendship?
So
Yeah,
I
so
would
I would
say,
say, I mean, we were
yeah, you go ahead, honey.
okay, yeah. So I would say we started off actually, it was a pretty close friendship. I think I think we were interested in one another from pretty early on, but it took a few months for that to develop, just like a relationship would. But we had these little like meet and get together things, just with other like coworkers there, and that was space that we used to make excuses to meet. But it wasn't too many months after that, maybe 2 or 3, that we started meeting outside of those just kind of mutual gatherings, and yeah, started making it more of a one-on-one type meeting. So I would say we were pretty close from the beginning, but it certainly developed pretty quickly as far as us having interest in one another. So
Okay, so you hung out a lot.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, we did.
So was it, can you describe it like a conscious thing? You know, like the first day, both of you got talking and everything. So did you make the conscious effort to keep at that friendship?
Oh, absolutely. I think from the very first day that we met each other, I think there was something that we really clicked on. I can't tell you exactly what it was, but it was very normal and very relaxed. It didn't feel like it was forced. We didn't have to hang out the whole entire day. And some way, somehow, we kind of just attracted to each other all day. And it became like from that on, um, it was like our friendship built from that very first day. And it's crazy how God brings you together with someone that you had never met before and you don't know personalities that you have your opposites of each other. And in just one day of meeting in that 1 second, you automatically like attract to each other and there becomes a friendship. And then you build into a relationship, like Collin said, like a few months after when we actually started hanging out like separate with just us two.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So Colin proposed, definitely. I want to believe that, isn't it?
Yes.
So Colin, at what point did you start thinking, this is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with?
Caleb, stop really.
Yeah, so Ruka, I hope I'm not throwing you under the bus here, but pretty interesting. So I had actually never dated somebody before Ruka. So Ruka had more dating skills than I did. Um,
Oh,
so, so I think the fact that that her connection early on, it was something that was really obviously meaningful. So I honestly, I'd say we felt a connection pretty early, and I don't think that really changed. I'd say it was probably 3 or 4 months after we met that we started dating and came a little closer. And I think both of us just have inherently pretty loyal personalities. And so I think that has only developed from there. Not that everything's been perfect, but I think things have developed um, pretty steady from there. I think we knew pretty early on that there was a lot there to try and go after. So, oh, good question. But yeah, I'd say pretty
so,
early on. It's hard for me to put a specific time on it.
okay. So why you thought about that? Did you ever think about, oh yeah, I'm white, she's black? Did you sincerely, did it cross your mind, the racial difference?
Caleb, Caleb, take it upstairs, honey. You take it upstairs for mommy, please.
That one more time, Pastor Tolu. I'm so sorry.
Did you consider the racial difference at any point before you, like, okay, what am I getting into? I need to think about it. Did you consider the racial difference before you went serious into the relationship?
So to be totally honest, um, not a ton. So Ruka and I, both the high school we went to was very, very um, just diverse racially. It was, I think, over 200 different dialects of languages were spoken at high school. So both of us were pretty used to engaging people of different, just cultures, racial backgrounds, ethnicities, and so both of us inherently were pretty comfortable with just meeting people from other groups. And I know specifically, I do remember one specific time. I was talking to my mom about this. Um, Actually, if I'm going to be totally honest, there was another young lady that I was kind of interested in at that point too, and I was kind of going back and forth, and I spoke to my mom about it, and I said, "Mom, I really like this one girl." Her name was oh goodness, that's terrible. Um, I don't remember what her name was, but I made the right decision. But there
You
was another girl I
shouldn't.
was interested in. Yeah. And at that time, I remember specifically talking to my mom in her house. I can envision where I was and where we had a conversation, and I was telling her about Ruka and how much I loved her and you know how much I was interested in her and wanted to pursue that relationship. Um, and I remember bringing up the culture, but I don't think it was ever really a big deciding factor for me. Like I just loved Ruka for who she was. I loved her heart, and I loved what God was doing in her heart, and so that is what attracted me to her more so than I don't think we ever had a big racial problem there. At least at the beginning. Um, um, there were things that developed over time that were hard, and I think Ruka could speak to that. Just
No,
as
you
far
talk
as
about that later.
how I was accepted, but yeah.
Okay.
But
So
yes,
at the
but that was from my
beginning,
angle. It wasn't a big.
okay. So at the beginning, nothing. It wasn't. So you proposed. So Ruka, I want to talk to you. You are an African lady, not just African, Yoruba for that matter. I know that Yoruba people are specific about certain things. So let's hear from you. Be very sincere. When you realize that, oh, I love this guy, or I like to be with him, it makes me feel great. I'm sure it did, and it still does. So what went through your mind about the racial issue? Like, oh, you are going to talk to your mom. I know your mom very well. So how did you feel like you're going to talk to your mom about, yeah, I'm in love with someone, he's a white boy?
Yeah. So, so when I it's actually funny because
This is going to be
when
good.
I first met Colin and we first decided that we were going to actually get into a relationship with each other, for a long time, I didn't even tell my parents because, like you said, like in the Yoruba culture, like you're supposed to marry somebody else that's from the same culture because your parents know how difficult and how hard it could be to have to be in a relationship with someone that's a different race, different culture, all the difficulties that come along with that. And there is this fear of you're going to lose sight of your culture. You're going to lose sight of where you come from, your upbringings and things like that. And so I was really afraid to even like tell my parents, even though me and my parents are very close and me and my mom are very, very close. I was still like, I kept it a secret for quite a while because I didn't know how to bring it up. I didn't know how they would respond. I didn't want them to feel like I was abandoning my culture in any way. And that was a big fear for me. And Collin knew that the whole time. I told him from the beginning that my parents didn't know that we were even a thing and that we were in a relationship in any way. And it wasn't until Collin asked me to prom our senior year of high school that I ended up telling my mom that I have a prom date and who he was. And I showed her a picture, and she looked at me in the face and she said, "Ruka, I've known the whole time." And I don't know why you didn't tell me, but I've known the whole time that there was somebody else and that you were thinking about and you were talking to someone. And so that was the funny part, is that even though I was like really afraid of telling her because of, the differences, and there's such a big gap. And it's not like both of us are come from like the American culture. It's two completely different cultures. And so that's what I was afraid of, is that they would not accept that. And in all reality, it actually turned out that both of my parents absolutely accepted it, and they love Collin. They probably ask about Collin more than they ask about me, but yeah.
Okay. So what has your faith, Collin, what has your faith got to do with all of this? The fact to be able to accept, at what point did you feel in your spirit like, oh, this is it, this is the girl, and how did you go about
Mhm.
proposing? I'm still gonna ask Ruka how well he did, but how did you go about proposing?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're asking, how does my faith play into discerning that Ruka was the woman for me?
Hmm.
So I'll be honest, and Ruka knows this. We had this discussion early on. Although I never, and I really still, I never race as really the big deciding issue or even culture. Um, but I do think us sharing this big same core faith is necessary for the flourishing of a relationship. And I'm not sure when I first met Ruka, I could have articulated this, but I do believe that God, in the way that He works, um, reveals this to us somehow. And maybe later on in life we become more articulate. But like as I've grown in my faith, I have come to like really deeply believe that marriage is ultimately meant to reflect God's Trinitarian nature. So does the Father and the Son relate to one another, have an eternal love relationship, and thus comes forth the Holy Spirit, which is also the person of God. Um, that so a husband and a wife are meant to, and children kind of reflect that. The whole family unit is meant to reflect God's Trinitarian nature. And so, although I could not have articulated that when I met Ruka, I do think it's this sense on a simple level of her and I being able to really complement one another, and to be able to really be a support system for one another's deeper God-given.
Yeah, go, not gonna
Um,
go.
so, to be totally honest and not to get too in depth with this was actually something I really wrestled with after I proposed to Ruka. I was reading from 1 Corinthians 7, where Paul's talking about those called to single life versus those called to married life. And I remember kind of having my own like mountain experience where I went up on a mountain and I was asking God to just show this to me. I really felt like in that moment, like I really did get this overwhelming feeling of God had brought Ruka to me for a reason. Like it's amazing how our stories came together. My family's from Canada and from the Eastern United States. Ruka's family obviously is from Lagos. And so us coming together was a miracle in and of itself. And we had been to this point 6 years when we were getting ready for marriage. And I just really got this overwhelming feeling from God in that moment that this was who I was supposed to be with, that we did complement one another, that we would help one another in pursuing our God-given life. I've grown in my education. I've come to be able to articulate that as we can reflect the Trinity within our marriage when we're at our best.
Mm.
And that's what I really think marriage is all about, is reflecting the Trinity. So I hope that gives a good answer. But
Yeah, that
that's a
was good
heartfelt
because
answer.
no, that was a good one. Yeah, because I like the way you were able to speak, not just for yourself, but to people out there, to know that that is what God expects marriage to be. And at some point, you got your conviction. Because for me, it's the conviction that keeps you going forever. That's why you see people celebrating 50th years, 60th year, because it gets to a point where you don't see the love, you don't feel the love, but the convictions help you to go through your marital journey. So I want to ask Ruka, so how did the proposal, how did it go? What happened? How did he propose? I want to know.
So he did very, very good. We were on our way to a trip to Pagosa Springs, and I just thought it was just like any normal regular trip. We were just gonna take a trip and just get away and one of our normal trips. At this point, I think we had already been like to many, many places together, so it was just a regular trip. And then he said that he wanted to take me to this waterfall and then when we got there, we were walking up the trail to the waterfall, and he's telling me the story. Um, and then all of a sudden, like we get to the top of the waterfall, and he knows how much I love waterfalls. That's like my favorite thing of all time when it comes to like going on hikes or walks. Is I always wanted to go to a waterfall, and we had been to so many already. And so he was telling me the story, and then all of a sudden, I turn around and he's down on one knee, and there's a ring, and I started crying. It was an emotional wreck. It was the perfect moment.
Oh, okay. So, Colin,
Yes.
how long did it take you to think about that?
Oh
Let's talk
man, a
about it.
while. Hey, she didn't mention the fun part of the story where I got pulled over on the way there
Oh yes,
by
he
the
got pulled
police.
over.
Yeah,
Yes,
that
that's
was
right. I
very
remember.
romantic. Um, Man, I don't know. I think it. I think any man wants to have like the perfect proposal story, and and I think sometimes when we overdo it, it's too much. But one thing I would share that was amazing. I was discerning all of this. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie or the musical, The Sound of Music, but there's a song in there that's sung by one of the nuns where she says, "Climb every mountain." And my mom told me as we were going there, she said, "Colin, go climb your mountain." Physically, we were climbing
Oh,
mountain to the waterfall, and then figuratively, we were climbing mountains in life. And so, honestly, I don't recall how long it took me to decide that, but I know it felt right. And I specifically remember talking with my mom about that and how it just made it really feel right. And I think it was a really special special occasion. So yeah, every time we go there, we have that special spot. Amazingly, too, my sister and her husband, sure they did their honeymoon was that same day. So it's a family tradition to go to go to that space. So
wow. That was your way of welcoming her into the family.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So,
And like I said,
Colin,
we'd been together at that time, so I was pretty close with her family at that point. But certainly, we've grown significantly closer since then. Um, so yeah.
definitely. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you another question. I mean, your mom was okay for you to marry a black girl. And I know that your sister, your senior sister, also married um, a black
Mhm.
African American.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So my sister is married to an African American man. Um, but I will say there is a difference culturally between an American um, African American individual and Ruka's African American as well, but someone who's truly emigrated from the Africa. But you know what? Honestly, my parents really have always been really accepting. I think that's ingrained in them. And to be honest, I mean, like where my family's from is not really as racially diverse. Like prior to living in Colorado, they lived in Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada. Um, not very racially diverse. It's not like Toronto. It's a pretty one culture white place as far as culturally speaking. So I think that my parents had, exposure to interracial couples with my sister and my brother-in-law. But even so, my parents are pretty individuals just in general. And I don't think, I never felt prejudice from them in that regard. I mean, all of us have things that God's working on our hearts. All of us have misperceptions about people of other cultures. And I'd say that's a lifelong journey to not have that about anybody. False perceptions or false judgments. But in general, I'd say my parents have always been quite accepting. And I'd say that's pretty much across my family. It hasn't been, from perception, a big issue. It's more so learning how to walk the dance of there are differences in cultures and how to approach that. That's more so been the question, because there are significant cultural differences, and that I've become to know over time more than I did when we first got together. So, but it's been a blessing in that journey. So, yeah.
Okay, so I know Colin is going to go at some point because he has to get back to work. And so that's why I want to really wrap up things with Collins before he goes. And then I'll get back to Ruka. So, Colin, I want to ask you, at what point the challenge of the cultural difference starts showing? Because sometimes for people, it's in the marriage, especially the wedding. And then you want this kind of wedding, and this is the Yoruba wedding that they have to make it big. They have to, at what point did you start feeling the shock in a way, or the challenge of the interracial relationship?
Yeah, I would say it's developed over time. It's really difficult for me to pinpoint, but I'd say one of the biggest things is just it's growing and maturing over time to have respect for one another's cultures, understanding just about, like, there's acknowledgement that there are differences. It allows us to grow. But I think one thing Ruka and I've always tried to focus on, and I've always said this, is the Christian faith we share has always been the unifying factor, and that transcends any cultural, above her being Yoruba or me being, Pennsylvania Dutch German and Canadian. Far above those distinctions are our identity in Christ, and I think has to be the starting point. From there, we have found differences. I mean, it's for example, even like I know, oftentimes in Nigerian culture, the involvement.
Okay. I'm sure we'll still check if Colin can come back,
I think we may have lost him a little bit, but he might be able to come back. It might be the same.
So let's hope that he gets back. But while we're waiting for Colin to come back, I want to say something like, Ruka, at what point for you, I know you've been in the US, you know the culture, you know the way things are, but what was the first shock for you, like really for you as a family? Was it during the wedding? Was it after the wedding? At what point did you have your challenge of interracial marriage?
So I would say, actually, the wedding was actually pretty easy because his family, even though they were used to more of like a very small, like wedding, and obviously in the Nigerian Yoruba culture, the wedding is very big. It's a 2-day event. And so that was actually not very difficult at all. His mom was a huge part in it and helping me plan, and so was he. We did the traditional Nigerian engagement, which both of his parents dressed up, and all of his friends came and joined in. And so that, I don't think it was difficult for that cultural wise. I think he did a very good job of just accepting the culture and really taking it in and fully taking it in. And he was very excited about it. I think where it started to hit and where it got hard was when we had kids. Is because when you have kids, you have to share both cultures. You have to be respectful of the other person and make sure that even on like holidays, birthdays, both cultures are being incorporated into the child, because you're growing this human being into being someone who resembles you, but also resembles like your faith and God and everything that they become. And so I think that's where it got really hard, was when you have kids. And I think, like any marriage, having kids is really tough on a marriage. And it kind of takes away some of that just you and that person time, because now neither of you can put each other first. It's all about that little bundle of joy that you've been given. And so I think that's been the hardest part, is finding the balance of teaching our kids both cultures, but also expressing to them that they come from African American, they're partially white, and then they're partially African American / Yoruba. They're all of that mixed into one, and trying to navigate that when it comes to the relationship between the both of us with our kids, sharing the culture from both, and even like the languages that are different, and just incorporating all of that into the child. I think that's when it got really tough, where we really had to think about it more than normal, was when we have kids.
Okay, so yeah, I know that usually it's when you have, especially your first child comes in, and then things are coming up from different areas,
Right.
and you're struggling to have a balance in your marriage, and so on. And then that's when you say some things and you say some things and all of those things.
Right.
But there's a situation, of an African, Black African, not African American, Black African marrying a white, and then they have a baby. They had their first baby, and the mother of the father of the baby said, "Oh, I have to come to the house." They both live in the same city here in America, and she wanted to come. Like, I need to come take care of the baby and so on like that. And the wife wouldn't want to hear about it, because it's like, "Oh, we didn't talk about this before we got married." And the husband was like, "I didn't know that this was going to be a big issue for us." So did you
Right.
ever have an issue? Because I know your mom, she's the one that wants to take care of you, take care of baby, take care of everyone. So did you ever get to that point? Did you ever have a scenario like that? Maybe not no, but at least little resistance.
Yes. Yeah. So definitely. After I had Caleb, I went through a really tough labor, where I was in labor for basically 2 days, and I pushed for 4 hours, and I ended up having to have a C-section. And so that was very tough on me, mentally, because, as women, when you go and have children, it's something that, like, you feel like your body should naturally be able to do it. And when you can't, that puts a lot of stress on you. And so my mom really came to the rescue and came in and stayed with us and helped out for, I think she was with us for at least a month, where she practically lived with us. She would go home on the weekends sometimes, here and there, or during the day. But then she would come back and stay the night and help me with the baby. And I think for a while there, it was really hard for Collin, because he felt like he wasn't as much as involved in actually like caring for the child at that moment, because me and my mom were kind of like bouncing off of each other, where she would help me at night, and at that time I wasn't working. So in my head I was thinking, well, let him sleep, let him get rest so he can go to work. I've got my mom here to help me, and I didn't realize how much it would bother him to not be fully involved at every step of the way with the child. And I think with any marriage that's difficult, but I think especially in a marriage like ours, where I'm African and he's white American, they don't normally do that. That's not a part of the American culture, where the parent comes and stays and helps with the baby. And so I think that was a really big culture shock for him, is to have my mom basically come in and move in with us for a whole month, and really take on and help me with the baby. And I think he felt very much so like left out, and like he wasn't able to fully take on responsibilities for the baby. But I think at the same time, me having the tough labor that I did, I really wanted that comfort of my mom being there. And so that's something that I made sure that I did differently the second time around, was to include him more in the beginning process with the baby, when they were first born. But I think that was definitely tough, for sure. And I think it definitely caused some like division between us, and it made things hard, and it caused issues. But I think we figured out a way to work through it and talk through it after all of that had happened. And we were both kind of able to express where we're coming from and how we felt. And I kind of expressed to him that's a part of our culture, and that's a part of our parents, is they want to be nurturing and come and help us. And it's the first time my mom has gotten to be a part of a grandchild, and so all of that mixed in, I think, was really hard for sure.
Okay, yeah, I can imagine because for a white American, you want to be part of your child's life. Like, oh, this is our baby, not the family's baby. I'm sure before they'll think about grandchildren, they want to think about mom, dad, and it's the normal thing. And it's not because it's new to you, but sometimes because of the things that you've had to go through with having a baby. But I mean, I learned something from what you've said. Both of you decide to talk about it together. It was okay for him to feel unhappy, because sometimes you see a situation where things like this will happen, and the woman first cannot even see the reason why the guy is angry. Why are you angry? Why? I think that the first point is to also understand where the other person is coming from. This is the right thing to do. And from what Collin said earlier on, even if you look at it from the biblical perspective, both of you being together as couple, as parent, the bonding together at every point is probably also what he believes in, and this also should happen to everyone, whether they're different culture, whether they're the same culture, the coming together to bond. Let's do the things together. I think we got Collin on. Collin, okay, we got you back in.
Hi, Pastor Tolu. I am so sorry about that.
No, you don't have
My
to be.
battery cut out.
No, you
I
don't have to be.
apologize, but I thought I'd log back in to finish answering the question you had asked me.
Okay.
So would you like me to
So,
do
okay,
that
well, allow you to
now,
finish
or
and
were you
then
up
we'll
to
come
another
back.
topic? You said go ahead and
You
finish?
can go and finish, please.
Okay, cool, yeah. So culturally, yeah, I think the things that has come up most has been just the difference in how connected I would say Yoruba people are with their families, even post marriage. And I don't want to give the wrong impression when I say that. Certainly, in my families are very connected. As we speak, my mom is moving in with my grandmother to help take care of her today. Um, but in general, I would say that there's still this large expectation um, for children to always take care of their elders in a Yoruba culture in a way that just has developed a little differently as far as text. And so it's not that it's been a problem is not the right word. I would just say that's been one area where we've had to learn and grow with one another, and how to work out some of those details. And so I've always loved, and I think Ruka would attest to this too, I've loved being a part of the Nigerian culture. I felt very welcomed and accepted into it, and that's really meant a lot to me. And I think part of it has just been learning how to, from my end, learning how to stand on a deeper level, why certain things from a Yoruba perspective are so essential and important within her cultural upbringing and within just her life. And then I think at the same time for her, it's also been important to learn how I've done growing up, and certain traditions that have developed within my family and within my culture. And I think us just learning how to have mutual respect and try and find balance has been part of the growth. So yeah, I think that's been really important.
Okay.
And then I would say, yeah, and then again, I would say though, this is true as well, and I've started to understand this more as of late too. But just even learning, like, to me, it's about appreciating the richness that comes from both instead of picking one or the other. I think God has used both cultures to develop beautiful things. I think that's really his vision for the eschaton is, but for the end times, God's vision for it is to have people of different cultures, different nations, every ethnic group bowing at the name of Jesus, and together with their diversity intact, using that to worship God. And so I think that for us has been part of the growth, is in really appreciating that, and also being to identify what are the gifts that your culture brings to us as a family, to us in our growth in Christ, to the church, to our children, and just to the world at large. And then also, what are things that my tradition, being obviously, more of a European tradition, the body of Christ, the world, our family. So I'd say it's been a respect of both.
Okay.
For us, and I think it's been a beautiful part of our journey.
Okay. So, I want to say something about what happens when culture clashes, because you said something about, yes, the beauty of the two cultures, how you bring them into your marriage. But what if when culture clashes? In Exodus chapter 20, the Bible said, honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long. And the Yoruba culture, the Yoruba culture side of that belief is you literally take care of your parents. Like you're working, you're earning some money, you can tell yourself that, okay, every month I want to be able to give this to my mom or to my dad. And so if you're married together, it's probably from your money. So it affects you as well, because, okay, so she's saying, oh, this is the way I know, this is the way my culture, honor our parents, would give to our parents. So she wants to cut a percentage of the income to give to our mom, or our dad, or both of them, like monthly. But your culture honors your parent as well. You honor your parent as well. If it's your parents' birthday, you may buy a card, you may buy a gift. In Africa, you can't really just give your parent a card for the birthday. So how do you put that together when culture clashes?
Is that a question you could help answer too? Because I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble hearing.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
I don't want to take up time
with answering. So I would say that we've definitely already had that issue. That's been a topic of conversation already. Because like you said, in our culture, that's just the way that we're raised, is as you grow up and as your parents grow and get older, it's almost like your responsibility to really take care of them, help them financially, even if they don't need the help financially. It's a part of your culture to constantly make sure that your parents are taken care of because they've spent so long taking care of you as well. And so I think that that's been an issue that we've had, and that we've really had to work through. And I think that that's something that's caused conflict within our marriage, to be completely honest, because I've always had that, even when it was my siblings or like older siblings, younger siblings, like I always make sure that they're well taken care of, and that things that they need, that if I'm able to provide for them, I'll provide it for them. And they know that they can always call me for that. I think that that's definitely been an issue. Because like you said, like when it's finances coming together and his culture is not used to that and mine is, it's trying to find a balance where I always make sure that I talk to him and I communicate with him and I let him know what's going on. Even if it's going to cause some kind of conflict, I'm going to tell him and say, hey, I'm going to give this to my parents, or do this or do that. And it has been tough, but I think we're at a place now where we finally found a way to communicate about it and really talk about it. I'm not saying this still doesn't get tough, it still definitely gets tough. And that's what comes with interracial marriages, is you both have cultures that are vastly different from each other. But I think that we've learned how to try to communicate through it and work through it, even though we may both get frustrated and say, why is this person doing it like this? Like, why can't they see my side? You have to understand that the cultures are very different, and you have to be able to talk and communicate about it. And I think that that's what it really comes down to, being able to do that. And we've been able to do that more so lately than before, but I think it definitely is an issue, and it's a topic of conversation.
Okay. I like the fact that you still not you're not hiding anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people will feel like, oh, if he's going to be complaining all the time, I can as well just take the money out without him knowing, which is not right. Because that's another thing that we all need to watch. We all need to be careful to be sincere with our partner in relationship. When couples start hiding things from one another, they're already creating a place for breakage in their family. And I like the fact that both of you are talking about it, because communication is very, very important. Both of you are talking about it.
Mhm.
You are not giving up on the right thing to do. And even though I kind of struggle with it, you are still doing what you're supposed to do, but letting your husband know, that's respecting your husband and letting him know. So let's talk about your side. What about the thing with his culture that you have also, that he feels this is right in my culture, but you are struggling with? Do you want to talk about anything like that before Collin come up and say something?
Um, I would say probably. I think it would probably be that in his culture, it's very much so that there is this sense of you leave um, your parents' house and then you become a family unit of your own, and they kind of become separated from you. And in my culture, it's very much so we're still like my parents are still involved in us. I talk to them every day, and he talks to his mom every day and his parents all the time and goes over there all the time. But I think one thing that has been hard for me, truthfully, in the past is just that in the past, the kids have seen his parents as much as they have seen my parents. And I think now it's definitely different now because he goes on walks with them all the time with his mom. But I think that that's something that's very different is we like to, Nigerians, you always like to like, always have people over. You're constantly having like gatherings. Everyone's coming over for dinner. You're constantly like communicating, talking to each other. You're in each other's lives all the time, every day, all day. But I think for his family, it's more so like when you get married, you kind of become separated from your family, even though you still have that tight knit family group. And I think him and his mom are very close, and me and her are very close, and they communicate often. It's just, I think that that's something that's been frustrating for me in the past, not so much now as opposed to the past, is the kids really having that connection with her more often. Because there was a time where I think it was hard, like the kids didn't know them as well. Because they were always with me or my family, or we were always at my mom's house. And so I think it's become really, really nice that the kids have gotten to know his parents and his side of the family more often. And that they know who Nana and Papa is, and that that's more of like an everyday thing for them to talk to them and communicate and see them. And I think that that's been the biggest frustration for me when it comes to like his culture and what's the difference in that. Um, and the fact that, you know, in his culture, it's not normal for you to help out your siblings, or feel like you're in charge of them, or like you have to take care of them, or like you have to take care of your parents. And so I think that's also been a frustration area as well, in trying to work through the differences in both of those subjects and topics.
Okay. So, Colin, if you can hear me,
And if
the other day I was talking to Ruka's sister, and I said, "Oh, what plan do you have this afternoon after church?" And she said, "Oh, we're all gonna be at Ruka's place." How do you take that? I know the Bible said a man will leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife. Yeah, even though I always said that God was talking to the men only, but that's
Yeah,
not it.
and I'll
So
and
how
guys,
do
I
you
would ask,
feel
and
about
forgive me,
that?
I'm
Having
just
everybody like in your house, in your space. That's the way Africans, that's the way we do it. So how do you cope with that?
yeah. I would say, and I think I'm sorry, you have to forgive. I'm still having a little trouble hearing, but I think I got the question here. Um, so yeah, I mean, I would say it's developed over time. For one, I'm not never the type of person to be really introverted. I'm okay with being extroverted, and so that has helped in the process. So I don't really mind people, everybody being over. Um, I would say though, I think one of the biggest things for Ruka and I has been communication and again mutual respect for just the other person's needs, and that's an ever growing thing. But I guess anybody tuning into this program, one thing I would say, just as encouragement, is it is absolutely more difficult to be in a cross-cultural marriage and relationship than in a one of just the same cultures. But I would also say the beauty that exists in it far exceeds the difficulty of working through the communication or the differences. And again, I would go back just to what is God's vision really for the end of all things. And I think the whole point of marriage is not for us to have, a nice social arrangement here on earth, just for us to have a support system. Those are just the beginning steps of marriage. But really, it's about spending your life with somebody where you can elect what God wants in the end, for God's vision for His church and the whole of creation. And so I would say in working through the challenges of communication, having everybody over at the house, um, it being us having to work through it, it really is reflecting God's new creation to come. And I think that that's a higher value. And I think it's something that I pray. My granddad said this to me once, but he said, Collin, it's couples like you and Ruka that are going to help tear down racism, that are going to be reflections of the world of what the church should be, a place where God uses different cultures, not to be at odds, not to say one's better than the other, but to mutually enrich and to bless the world. So again, I just pray that our marriage would be a little microcosm, a little example of what the church at large can be, a place where communication, respect, and an appreciation of one another's gifts and specific just cultural gifts that they bring, where that can be used to glorify God's name, and again to be a beacon of light to the world of how we should do that and reflect that even in our interrelations. So we've had to work through communication stuff. There's no question, but I think it's a journey. We're still on it, but in the end, I know that the project is so worthwhile and so beautiful. So I hope that helps answer the question.
Yeah,
I
that's
kind of take it as it
amazing.
comes and
That's
goes,
great.
and we do that
Yeah.
together. So
No, yeah. So,
so
and that is very important, Colin. The fact that you're making people understand what the kingdom of God is in marriage is very important, because sometimes people lose focus on that and feel that, oh, it's just gonna be both of us, and you're not thinking about God, that is the third party in the marriage that brings the marriage together. So let's talk about the good things. The good things. What are the beautiful things that you are really enjoyed marrying to um, a different culture? I mean, I know about Caleb. Caleb is handsome guy because the back is wide. I see Grace also. Grace is pretty. I see her all over the church yesterday. So apart from the fact that, yeah, you have beautiful children when there's interracial marriage, you still have it if it's the same culture, but I'm just saying that you have it. So what are the beautiful things that you've actually enjoyed marrying someone that
yeah,
is not your culture?
Ruka, Ruka, could I hop in and answer this,
Yeah, go ahead.
and then I may need to head out after that, but if that's okay, Pastor Tulu, I'll go ahead and hop in here. I would say, I mean, I know for me personally, and Ruka could speak to what she's gained from being more enriched within my culture. But I would say for me, I've loved the communal nature of the Yoruba community. So honestly, from day one, I've loved like these huge gatherings, just where people coming together and celebrating with one another. It feels like a really God honoring thing to me. I love how, and I've always said this, I love the respect that's there for the Lord. So I feel like whenever any Nigerian gathering I go to, it's grounded in prayer. It's grounded in the name of Christ, and then we celebrate from there. I've been to celebrations where we're celebrating a birthday, and I've been where we're celebrating a memorial of someone's life. But it just feels like what God calls us to do. So for me, that's been really enriching, seeing the community of the African community come together to celebrate. It feels really biblical to me. Another thing I would say is I've loved that the church, again, I see it as an enriching thing, but I know, like, when I come to Christ Harvesters, I feel so blessed and enriched by the community of Christ that's there. I get a different angle on things. There's different emphasis. It's the same Church of Christ. It's not a different faith, but I get a different angle on things. I get a beautiful viewpoint of African Christology, whereas I know within my tradition and my home church, again, same faith, but there's a different beauty that comes from it. There's a beauty that comes from European models of Christianity, the liturgy, focus on, it's kind of a Christology like this. I'm not making sense there, but
just keep on.
Yeah, just, I guess basically our experiences within the church have mutually been enriching, both from more of a Yoruba Nigerian perspective on the Christian faith, and then a European Western Caucasian or white perspective on the faith, and I find them mutually enriching. So that's been a blessing. I think that's been passed on to our kids, I pray, and I pray they're getting the best of both cultures. And then I guess one more thing that is I have really appreciated. I've appreciated how much the community of faith within, like, Christ Harvesters, for example, where we're all attending church, has been there for us at every step of our life. And that's something that, although I've experienced it in my home church as well, I've experienced on a whole nother level, in that the whole community is there for the naming ceremony of our children, to celebrate birthdays. If somebody's in the hospital or sick, everybody's there. If we're celebrating anything, they're there. We're welcome into there. And so it's this real sharing of life. And so I know for me, just being engaged in Yoruba culture, I felt this, I guess the overarching thing is the sharing of life, and a deep and embedded faith in Christ. And although I certainly have that embedded faith in Christ, and I do believe there are lots of people in the Western white world that have that as well, it still has been reinvigorating to my faith and where I'm at, to be welcomed into the Yoruba perspective on all that. And that's really meant a lot to me. So I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm wording that correctly.
It does. Yeah. You talk about the respect, you talk about the beauty, the gathering of people together, you talk about the church, the support, and so on. I mean, those are the things that are very good about the culture.
Absolutely. And
you enjoy.
And it's been really real, I know. Again, it's there present in the Western world, but I'd say it's an emphasis that's really present in Yoruba circles. And I've appreciated that. It's I think it's something that the whole Western, again, Caucasian white world can learn from. And I think we can both learn from one another in different aspects. So, well, Pastor Tolu, thank you so much for having me on. I've really been blessed to do this. I'm sorry again, I cut out in the middle, but
no.
Thank you so much for having me on. I probably should head out, but it's been a real blessing. So
thank you so much, Collin. Thank you. See you.
Yes, bye, honey. God bless you. Take care.
Yeah, God bless you too. Bye. So, Ruka, what are the things that have been from the culture of Collin that you've really enjoyed, that sometimes you're like, oh, I'm glad that I'm married to this culture?
Yes. So I would say definitely the way that they celebrate holidays has been really huge for me because even though like they're not used to the big gatherings, the family comes together. It's really all about like just being together and just enjoying one another's company. They've all been very, very accepting of me. I always hear horror stories about like your mother-in-law and how, like it's so difficult to work with them, but I have never actually had to deal with that. His family has always been like so welcoming and loving of me. They're always so supportive. His church has always been so supportive. And so I've really appreciated just the acceptance on both sides. Of both sides of the culture, of one another, and of the families and the blending of the families. I've also really, really enjoyed the fact that his family really takes in on our culture. Like even for our wedding, they were such a huge part of it. They all loved getting dressed up and just being a part of like the different events. And I think that that's been something that's been really, really amazing. That's just getting to know a little bit more about how other cultures do it. And so really accepting one another and accepting each other and blending our families together. I think that that's been um, like really amazing. And it just goes to show how even though you're from different cultures, different races, that as long as you have God at the center of that marriage and of that relationship, that it has endless possibilities. Although it may come with its challenges and it comes with its hardships, at the end of the day, it's a really beautiful thing, and you get to blend families and show the world that like families who are racially different and who are culturally different can still blend and still make like a beautiful and happy family. And so I'm just really thankful that I get to be a part of that, and I've gotten to meet and travel because Nigerian people don't travel as much. So getting to travel all over the world and see different things and see new things, that has been amazing as well. And so he's taught me a lot of new things, and so has his family, and I've taught him new things, and we've kind of blended it together to show that to our kids. And so that's been the best part.
Okay. So what about the part that you are married to someone that does not feel like he's the god of the whole family as a head of the family? Because that's another thing with African culture that is different from if you're marrying someone from Europe or America and so on, you see the couple see themselves as friends and they work together as friends. If you're going to advise singles that are not married, or people that are just getting into marriage, like 1 year, 2 years, 5 years of marriage, what will your advice be for them?
I think that one thing that I would advise that I'm still working on is the whole of being submissive to your husband. And I think whether that's Nigerian culture, I think Nigerian culture does it, it's much easier in a Nigerian culture just because the men are already like their head of the household. It's just um, that's just the way that things are looked at. That's the way the culture sees it. And I think that in American culture is not as much of that way. But I think that that's been difficult for me. I think that's been the most difficult part for me is that even though I come from the Nigerian culture, my husband coming from the American culture, he even though he wants to lead the family and provide for us and do all of those things, he doesn't see himself as head of the household. And so it's being submissive, I think, comes a little bit harder. And it's more so like you guys are a partnership, which I think is a great thing. I think in any marriage, it should always be a partnership. But I think that has definitely, we've had issues on that. And really trying to figure out the balance of how to make our family unit work in that sense. But I think that's definitely something that I'm still struggling with, that I still need to work on every day. Because when you hear the words of being submissive, you tend to think like you just go along with anything that they say and you don't really have a voice and you can't do anything for yourself and it's all about what the man says. And I've come and I'm trying to learn and understand that that's not the meaning of the word when I hear that word. And so I have to constantly like check myself anytime that word is brought up. And I have to remind myself that I have to let him lead us. And that's very hard to do. But I have to allow him the opportunity to lead us because I think it's something that he really wants. And I think that that's why he struggled so much with, when my mom came to stay with us and help with the babies, that he didn't feel like he was leading the family. And I think that's a very big, important thing is that the man feels like they're leading their family and that they're leading them in the way of God and the way that God wants the family to be led. And so I think that's definitely been a struggle of something that I'm still working on, but it's an everyday reminder of myself that, being submissive doesn't mean that I don't have a voice of my own and that I'm not my own person. It just means that I'm really taking into consideration things that bother my husband, things that he are really important to him, and, letting him lead our family in the right way.
Yeah, I think it's very important because people go from the point that, oh, as submissive wife, I'm not a dummy. I have brain. I can also think, which is good, but to the extreme end where the man is not also allowed to lead. The man is not the ruler of the family. The man is the leader of the family. Both words are different. A ruler is the one that controls. It doesn't matter what other people feel like. It's what you feel. It's okay. That's what a ruler does. But a leader leads by influence. This is the way I think we want to go. What do you think about it? Let's pray about it and take other people along with him with full understanding, but to still be able to say, I'm saying this word over the family. I think it's very important, and so on like that. But I'm glad that both of you respect one another, and both of I know that at times everybody feels like, what am I doing in this marriage? And then, have you ever had that moment, like, what am I doing here?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think that he has had that feeling as much as I have. But I think in any marriage you have moments where you doubt and you're like, what in the world am I still doing here? I should just leave. Like, we're not meant to be. There's always that sense of like you're not meant to be with someone. But what keeps me in the marriage is definitely obviously the fact that we have like two, almost three, like beautiful children together, but also the fact of what he said earlier is that there's a reason why God brought us together. There's a reason. And there's so many things that had to fall into line for us to even meet. We went to the same high school for 6, 7 years, same school together for 6, 7 years, and we didn't even know each other. We had never spoken words to each other. We had never communicated. Weren't in the same group of people. We come from two different parts of the world and two different cultures, and somehow God brought us together. And so I think that that's what keeps me going and saying, you have to put in the effort. No marriage is going to be easy. No relationship is going to be easy. And I saw a quote that says you have to pick your hard. Relationships are hard, but also divorce is hard. Having kids is hard, but being single is hard. So you have to pick which hard is easiest for you. And so I think really trying to like work it out and communicate and take every day one step at a time. I think there's beauty in that. And so every time I start to second guess and every time I start to say, no, I'm done. And, like it's time to move on. God is always pulling me back and saying like, just reevaluate and just recheck and just really appreciate the good and all of the beautiful moments that you've had within that relationship. But definitely for me to say that I haven't thought about that would not be close to the truth. But it's the want to keep working at it that keeps us together.
I like the God factor you talked about, knowing that God brought us together, having that vision helps you to move forward. And the fact that both of you are able to communicate with one another, even in difficult times, in challenging times, you're able to talk to one another, because I feel that is one of the problems that relationships are having and marriages are having, not being able to communicate effectively with one another, not being able to understand with one another that, okay, this is Ruka, she was born in Nigeria, she has Nigerian parents, the way she sees things are going to be different. And this is Collin. Collin is a white American. This is the way he sees them. Because when people start saying like, oh, you did this against me, then it becomes a problem. But when you see from where the other person is coming from, it helps you. And then, I mean, the other person too is not staying where they're coming from to say, oh, this is me and this is the way it has to go. But, you know, marriage is give and take. You kind of like, okay, you let go of some things. You have to pick your battles in life generally. So
Yeah.
I think that those things have helped your marriage. I really want to appreciate you, Ruka, and your husband Collin, for coming up on this program and the sincerity in which you have talked, the realities of things that you have talked. It's so important for me, and I know for all the people that are watching right now. So I want to ask you last question. It's not going to be any issue if Caleb want to marry anybody. Will it be an issue?
Oh, absolutely not. I encourage it because when I was younger, I had never even been interested in any other guys or black or Nigerians. That's all I'd ever been interested in until I met my husband, and it's opened up a whole nother world for me. And I think that I see more of the beauty of this world and what God's intention for people is to love everybody around you, whether they're the same color or not, or whether they're the same culture or not, and to appreciate that about the other person. So I'm excited to look forward to whoever Collin or Caleb or Grace brings home. It's not going to bother me either way because, they've gotten to grow up and see our relationship, and I've gotten to see the amazing things that come from, interracial marriages. So
thank God. I mean, the God factor is God is the same God.
yes,
That's amazing. So we thank God for for you, for your husband. We thank God for your marriage. Is Caleb there? Can you lift Caleb up?
yes. Caleb, come here. Come see
So
mommy.
that would be nice. I know he celebrated his birthday in church yesterday. He
Yes.
was
Here's
looking good.
Caleb.
Hi, Caleb.
Hi.
Hi, hello.
You go kiss.
Oh,
Yay.
that's great. How is Grace?
She's good. She's taking a nap right now. She's asleep.
I know Caleb is a handful.
Oh, yes. He's
So,
been running back and forth here while I've been talking. So,
okay. So all
yeah.
the best in April when you have
Thank
another
you.
baby. Take
Yes.
good care of yourself and
Thank
God
you.
bless you always. Bye
Yes.
for now.
Bye-bye.
I want to say thank you everyone for watching. God bless you. And till we come your way another week, next week, Monday, is another beautiful day on Life and Relationship Realities with Tolu Alabi. See you then. God bless you. Bye for now.